to Our Stories Matter, Campus Voices, Civil Engagement in an Era of Division. This season, we're asking one urgent question. How do we engage across deep differences on college campuses without shutting each other down?
At a time when conversations can turn tense, polarized, or silent altogether, we're slowing things down. We're practicing something harder than arguing, listening. In this season, we interview leading scholars, journalists, filmmakers, and legal experts who share practical tools for navigating difficult dialogue, including confronting the rise of Jew hatred on campus.
This isn't about avoiding difficult conversations. It's about developing the relational courage to stay engaged in them. It means showing up with curiosity, respect, and a willingness to listen, even when it's uncomfortable. Join us as we explore what it takes to remain in the conversation during a time of deep division.
Welcome back to Our Stories Matter. In our current climate of intensive division, is it even possible for two women from totally opposing sides of deeply painful conflict to build up profound healing friendships? Well, today, we are so honored to be joined by Heidi Basch-Harod, a Jewish women's rights activist, and Neda Higuera, a Palestinian American lawyer.
This was an incredibly emotional, honest, and painful episode as they both forged an unlikely and beautiful sisterhood in the aftermath of October 7th. Instead of trying to change each other's minds, they leaned into genuine curiosity to hold each other's pain. I mean, it was a tear-jerking masterclass for Mary and me on really thinking about dropping the oppression Olympics to grant all of us human dignity. So grab some tissues and get ready for a truly powerful episode.
Neda and Heidi, thank you so much for being here today. We really appreciate it. And maybe we can just start a conversation by Heidi, tell us, how did you both meet? How did you become friends? What is the story?
In the aftermath of October 7, I run a women's rights organization called Women's Voices Now. The fact that there was complete denial of what occurred on October 7, particularly to women and girls, really set me, as a women's rights activist, set me off on sort of an existential crisis of what had I been doing for the past decade and a half of my life. And I felt that I'd sort of hit a wall and I didn't know if I could continue my work. Coincidentally, we were co-hosting a Women Life Freedom Film Festival in West Hollywood with another organization called Empower Women Media. And the head of that organization, her name is Shireen Tabor. She's an Iranian American woman. And she asked me how I was doing. And I looked her straight in the eye and I said, awful, terrible. I don't know where we go from here. And she looked me straight in the eye and she said, you're not alone. We're here for you. And so she invited me to be part of an initiative she started called the Abraham Women's Alliance, where Muslim, Jewish, and Christian women were meeting together every month to talk about what had happened and how to move forward and to do so together. In one of those the first conversation that I joined, right, Neda? It was the first one that I had ever been on. Neda was in there as well, and I have a history of trying to create bridges between Jews and Palestinians specifically, and here was a real live Palestinian woman in the room, and I just couldn't believe it, that like here I was in this raw, vulnerable, awful moment, and here's exactly the woman who I wanted to be able to interface with and understand like why, how, when, where, like what, where and what coming after that. And so coincidentally, so we both had a little talking in the meeting, and then we both coincidentally reached out to Shireen and asked if we could be connected to each other. And that's how we started our conversations and our connection, was from that one Zoom meeting in those really intense months right after October 7th.
Yeah. And what stuck out to me about Heidi and why I wanted to talk to her was because during this Abraham Women's Alliance call, there were like over 20 amazing, incredible women doing all kinds of great work. And so they were sharing about it. And Shireen asked Heidi to share a little bit. And Heidi said she was just taking it all in. And at this time, she didn't have anything to share, but she was grateful for everyone in the room, everyone sharing. And this was pretty close after October 7th, when everyone was so eager to talk and to tell you how they feel and to tell you what they're thinking and how they're hurting. And I was getting tired of hearing people talk at each other. And so it just brought me to tears when Heidi said she doesn't have anything to share right now, but she was just her thanking everyone and listening. I was like, who is this person? I need to know them. And something about that really just healed my heart a little bit.
That's amazing. That's, Susan and I often talk about that concept of speaking, listening so you can understand and not so you can respond. And it sounds like, Heidi, you were in this emotional space where you were just taking it in and not necessarily wanting to respond, but just feeling it and understanding it.
Yes, exactly. There was a lot to understand and a lot that needed to be listened to, for sure. And usually I have a lot to say. I always have a lot to say, but that was really and truly a moment where I needed to just sit back and listen. Yeah.
And obviously, we'll get into this later, but I think that's the whole point of why we wanted you both to be on. Before we talk about how to hold conversations in the era of division, which is why we have you both on, what do you both admire about each other? And maybe, Nita, you can start this time.
Oh, the list is long. I love how Heidi is a very deep thinker and feeler and speaker. So her words mean something. They're not just empty, and there's a lot of thought and heart behind them. She's quite intentional in the things that she says and does. Very intentional, much more than most people that I know. So I very much appreciate that. And she's obviously very beautiful on the exterior. So I love, she's just so pretty. Our Zoom meetings, it's fun to talk to her. She's absolutely stunning.
Oh, I love that.
My turn?
Yes.
Oh, good. Okay. There are many things that I love and admire about Netta, but I'm going to say that at the top of the list is, and I'm going to get emotional. She taught me the importance of talking to God and being heard, and how important it is to make prayer available, that I can always be asking for what I need and hoping out loud for better things for the people around me. And I feel like as a Jewish person, like, that should be obvious to me. Like, we have a lot of prayer, we have a lot of ritual and things. The way Netta connects with the divine is in a very outward way. And I feel like in these very dark and dramatic times, like, I needed that, to be reminded of the divine in all of this. So she gives me hope. She still gives me hope. And she's so brave and courageous when she asks me questions that have really hard answers. And I know that I can speak the truth, my truth, and she'll respond to me truthfully and be honest with if it hurts her, if it helps her understand something. So just, it's very rare and hard, especially these days with so many difficult things, to have open, honest conversation with someone. And while we may not always agree or see it the same way, like, our destination is the same, which is a better place for everyone. And I just, I don't know how I could have got through the past 2.5 years without having someone like her in my life. And because of who she is and who her background is, it's just all the more meaningful, because the world says we're not supposed to get along and we're not supposed to be able to love each other and connect deeply. And she makes it possible because of who she is and how she's able to just see and understand the world and see the bigger picture.
This is
Thank you.
brought tears to my eyes. I remember I was looking to someone to have uncomfortable conversation with after October 7th, and I couldn't find a partner to do that. And it sounds like both of you are able to have those uncomfortable conversation in a way that is respectful to one another. And that's rare. And, I'm wondering, at what point did you realize that your different backgrounds, different identities can make this friendship complicated?
Yeah, right away, especially right after October 7th, when we were, it was, I think I'll speak for myself, but it's probably same for Heidi, is that we were looking for that challenge and that uncomfortability and that, to face it and get through it, the friction. So I think we knew and we invited it.
I agree. It was just such a hard time that there was no way over, or it was like, you got to go through it. There's no over around. And she was we were ready to go arm in arm through it. And that there were very few people, even now, who can do that, I think.
Oh, for sure. Which is why, this season is focused on people who have been able to do it, because it's been incredibly challenging. And, being on a college campus has been really hard. And I'm trying to teach critical thinking in my classes. And I think a lot of is knowing the intention of the other person. You both saw each other, it sounds like, before the conversations, guessing of the Middle East even came to play, that you saw each other's heartbeats.
It seems so, magically through a Zoom screen. I don't know. It's pretty incredible.
Do you
Yeah, I would
remember
say
the
so.
first time that you both had like the serious conversation about the Middle East after October 7th? Like, do you remember that? How did that even happen?
Yes. Who would you like to answer first?
Oh, why don't you start?
Okay. So from an email, it went straight to, okay, let's make a Google Meet date. And I think our first conversation was 2 or 2.5 hours long. And it was a lot of crying and a lot of not talking, actually. It was just like seeing each other's pain. It still, again, still makes me, I feel it very acutely still. And that would just even be in her presence again, when like this was a moment when people like us weren't talking to each other and were throwing all kinds of things that were not going to go anywhere productive. So just to really be able to hold each other in each other's pain. And then the conversations, I mean, I honestly don't remember all the things that we covered, but it was sort of like asking each other the questions you always want to ask the other, right? So whether it was about what was happening, what happened on October 7, why do we believe that? Why do we not believe what happened or didn't happen? What's going to happen next? What is this war? Who are the people in charge? Are they making the right decisions? Where is this all going to end up? So it was just, I didn't feel like anything was off limits, where in these sorts of conversations between peoples in conflict, there is a lot of stuff you're not supposed to talk about, but we both sort of went in there full throttle. Because there was nothing left to lose, right? There was only to gain. There was nothing, everything had been lost. So we had to gain ground together.
Yeah, I remember vividly that I was sharing my pain about the lives lost and the casualties, and just, it was just every day a lot, hundreds and hundreds. And I remember Heidi expressing also pain for the lost Palestinian lives. So that was really nice. That was powerful.
Did you expect her?
Not necessarily, no.
It's interesting. The reason I'm asking, there is this assumption that I've been noticing among a lot of non-Jewish people, that they assume that Jewish people don't care about Palestinians. I found myself actually, when I give talks those days, I have to say almost like, because people assume because of my background. So I would automatically say I'm pro-Palestinian and I'm pro-Israeli. I'm just not pro-Hamas, because people assume that as an Israeli, I'm against Palestinian. And I think the fact that both of you are able to lean in with curiosity and with compassion to each other, to hold the pain and to validate each other's pain. It doesn't sound like you were trying to justify each other's side. You were just holding the pain. That made it so powerful. And maybe, hopefully, took down some of those assumptions and misinterpreting that people might have on both ends, I assume. I think that if I would sit right now with a Palestinian, I would have my own implicit bias about how they view Israelis and how they view me and how they view the war. And the ability, the courage that both of you had to just sit and listen and have space for each other pain, I think it's remarkable. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
I know, I'm wondering, was there ever a moment in those really painful conversations that either one of you felt misunderstood by the other? And if you did, how did you work through that?
I think Heidi does a really great job of understanding and asking the clarifying questions. So I don't recall feeling misunderstood. No.
Yeah, so this is sort of a miraculous thing. Truly, I don't think I've ever had a dialogue relationship with another person where I also didn't feel misunderstood, or didn't feel like if I felt misunderstood in a moment, that I couldn't say, let me reiterate that. And I need to know that you heard me. Not that I've said those words to you specifically, Netta, but in my, if there's been things where I'm wait, I need to say that again. There's been no, or maybe we're going to go back to that point. Can we go revisit that? I feel like we do a lot of revisiting. So just that, just again, willing to be vulnerable and to be yeah, I didn't get that the first time. I mean, it's an ideal dialogue, right? I studied conflict resolution in college, right? And all about open sharing and active listening and all of those different things. I felt like I've never been able to put those principles into such authentic use as I have with Netta. And that, again, it's bravery and courage and intention. So what that's done is made me more bold and with conversing with people who are not so easy to speak to truthfully and honestly, that I know it's possible. She proves that all of those principles of dialogue, facilitated dialogue, are absolutely valid, and we can all be communicating on that level.
Yeah, and I will say, we are not talking so that we can be understood. I'm not talking to Heidi so that she can understand me. I am talking to her so I can understand her. I already understand myself.
Mhm.
I know all the Palestinian views. I know how to justify it, how to, be a victim, whatever. I want to understand her. And I believe she's coming from the same place. And so at the end of our calls, it's not like, oh, was I understood? Although I was inherently, because that was Heidi's mission in the call. And hopefully that was, she knows she was understood, because that was my genuine, like, that's why I'm spending my time. That's the value that I get out of it, is understanding Heidi, because really I had no idea. And just we can get into some of the questions I asked her, but yeah, I had no idea how rationalization happens in these situations, or, how she sees something totally different. Like, what is it? And so that's the value to me, is getting some understanding of her perspective.
That is so powerful because I love what you said, Netta, about, I understand myself. So I really want to understand Heidi. And then Heidi, when you were saying bravery, courage, what was the third? Was it intention? So how do you, okay, so this, we're hoping students are going to listen and faculty, but how do you incorporate that in concrete ways? Because what I have experienced is sort of like that competing piece of like who's suffering more, whose trauma is worse. So how do you incorporate that just in concrete ways? Because it's beautiful. And I have a feeling you both maybe like this in general and you found each other, but I'm just wondering.
So concretely, what I think, or what I know is unique about Neda, is her willingness to be accountable uh, for her people, actually, right? And not that she represents every Palestinian, but in this specific situation, like as a Jewish person, as an Israeli, I can be held accountable for the actions of my people and say, this is suspect, this is not, there's something to discuss here, this wasn't right, or this isn't right, whatever. I can have nuance about it and contextualize, and like she said, let me explain to you my rationale of how I get to this opinion about, the prime minister of Israel, or what happened in this news story, or daily life in Israel, those kinds of things. She is able to like listen to me say, look, like, it's not all roses on your side of the conflict either. Like, let's talk about what's happened historically. Let's talk about what is Palestinian politics like, or how are women treated, or we can just really, she's very honest and can be very accountable, so that I don't feel like what's happening in the broader world is that one side is guilty and one side is innocent, right? That's never the situation in a conflict, whether it's an interpersonal conflict or an international conflict. So both being able to be accountable to each other and take accountability for sort of like the greater collective, even though we don't represent the entire collective for both of us, it really takes down the tension, right? It really diffuses the sort of the quagmire of like war, literally, or just when you're having like a complicated conversation, and de-escalates the feeling of wanting to be defensive and like deny that anything's wrong on my side, because she's willing to say, yeah, okay, we're not perfect, right? So that's really unique in this sort of conversation.
That's for sure. Aneta, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think with bravery, it's about not worrying about Heidi judging me. So really hard topics like the violence against women on October 7th, of, being able to tell her that I didn't believe that, or that what I saw, it's not even necessarily that I didn't believe it, but everything that I saw coming through in my echo chamber was that it was made up. It's used as fodder to, bomb Gaza, so that's where I was. And so to be able to tell her that, and also explain why I thought that, as an educated feminist attorney, why I, like she said, how can people deny this? Well, I'm telling her what I saw and what I read and what it made me believe. So yeah, bravery there. And also to be able to ask her questions about, do you believe that all of the killing is justified? Or do you think this is collective punishment? And to hear her say it. And right now, those questions are not as emotionally fueled as they were back then, when I was literally seeing things that I was thinking are collective punishment, and seeing these bombs drop. And so I would be just in tears about this. And so to be able to ask her and hear her answer, the bravery to ask questions and not feel like you're going to be judged.
Wow. And then I have a follow-up question. So then, Heidi, when you were hearing that, like just in terms of we're all in our own echo chambers for sure. And Heidi, how were you feeling and how did you respond to the question? And maybe they were those are two different answers.
Say that again.
For example, when Netta was saying, what I was saying is that all of the sexual assaults did not happen in October 7th. And everything we were saying, it was. So when you're having a question asked, how do you remain like just calm and regulated and curious?
So it was just very clear to me that she wasn't saying those things to upset me or to insist that what she believed to be true was the truth. It really, again, earlier you mentioned curiosity. There was just I could sense that it was genuine curiosity. Tell me why what I think to be true isn't. And then the door opened for me to it wasn't like she was waiting to find a hole in my story and be like, aha, see, I was right, you're lying. That was never the thing. It was genuine curiosity that she actually had doubt. She doubted her reality and was willing to go with me on a journey so we could have a shared reality, which is another thing that I think is very uncommon right now. And we all follow into it because of the social media landscape, the echo chambers. So, but she's like a real person who was like, no, I don't want to be in this place of confusion and hatred and anger and devastation. I want to be in a better place. So maybe if you can talk to me about I don't know what I don't know. And I just felt like that was really genuine on her end. So I wasn't upset. I didn't think she was, like I said, I didn't think she was trying to find a hole in my story to tell me I was a liar, yeah.
You know what's interesting about what you're saying? For some reason, what I can think about is so my colleague Arno is a former neo-Nazi. When you ask him, how do you know that someone is not radicalized, for example, or brainwashed, he goes, I don't know. And then the other person's like, what do you mean you don't know? I was like, no, that's what it means. When you start doubting, when you start asking questions saying, I don't know, then you know that someone is actually curious and wants to understand and they're not one mind rigid way. And just to be honest, like even when you were giving the example of the sexual assault, like my heart was like stopping for a second because it's such it's still a raw trauma, I think, for many Jewish women and Muslim women in Israel. I mean, we had Anila Ali on the podcast, and when I had a talk with her, she was sharing her story about a Muslim woman a Bedouin that was raped and murdered on October 7th. And I'm wondering, for either one of you, but Netta, let's start with you. Was there ever a moment when you changed your opinion, where you feel like your perspective was changed because of something that Heidi said? And afterwards, Heidi, was there ever a moment when you said, you're right, like my mind is being changed right now, my perception is changed?
Yeah, I would say about the sexual assaults, just before talking to Heidi and reading a piece that she had written, I hadn't felt sadness about it, or like, as a woman, I normally feel the pain of other women when they're sharing with me. And when I hear about it, it's just like in my bones, I share with that. And I hadn't had that. So that was a big one. And just understanding a little bit more about the state of Israel and where they're coming from with defense and the threats that they're facing. So those are two big ones.
It sounds like I'm going to put words in your mouth, so correct me if I'm wrong, but almost like humanize the enemy, like humanize the other side, being able to see them as being able to see the pain of just the individual person who was hurt and not Israel bad in a way.
Oh, yes.
What about you, Heidi?
I'll give a really recent example of what I've learned from like the muscle she's helped me strengthen. It's a social media story. I reposted something from the Free Press about the Tucker Carlson interview of Mike Huckabee, of Ambassador Huckabee. Because I believe in the Free Press's integrity, I just repost that because I'm like, yeah, that's the opinion I share. And then someone in the Instagram sphere pushed back against me on that. And I was like, that's interesting. So I texted Netta and I was like, where are you on Tucker Carlson these days? And Candace Owens, like anti-Semite, you're like, you tell me, like, And so she shared with me that, yes, he's, a problematic figure, or not problematic, maybe a controversial figure, but she appreciates the way he thinks and his curiosity and how he really pushes hard questions. And because I trust her and love her so much and know that she wouldn't, like how sincere she is about fighting against hatred, and especially anti-Jewish hatred today, that she's committed to me that she will do what she can to fight against that. I was like, you know what? I better go and listen to this interview for myself. I need to have my own opinion about that. And I'm going to ask her questions along the way. And I know she's going to answer me as she can with that 2-month-old baby, So, so I listened to it and we had some back and forth about that. And again, like, because I have this trusting relationship with her, I'm willing to make myself so uncomfortable as to listen to an almost 3-hour interview of Ambassador Huckabee and Tucker Carlson. Not because I think I need to then agree and be like, oh, no, he's not an anti-Semite, but because I need to know for myself, and that she's in the world and she's able to, I don't know, it's hard to explain, but like to be in the gray area with me, the space in between where you can see the value of something and be critical of it at the same time. So just living in that complexity and having a partner in that, I can do really difficult things that I didn't know I could do post October 7 reality. So I hope that answers the question, because it's like, it was really recent where I was like, wow, I'm having real resistance against this issue and this pushback. But I have to go. I have to go deeper, and like, even though she's thousands of miles away from me, like I feel like she's holding my hand through those things, and I can reach out and ask for support.
Yeah, and that conversation helped me. I haven't listened to Tucker since then, just because I haven't, no particular reason, but it helped me to know what to listen for, because she pointed out some of the things that he says and the way that he reasons that obviously I hadn't thought about, just how he can be hurtful and deceitful in the way that he speaks about Israel and Jewish people. And so I made it a note to listen a little bit differently to Tucker when I do listen to him again. So before, I would hear people say, especially about Tucker Carlson, he's an anti-Semite, he's an anti-Semite. And to me, it's name calling. And it's like, it doesn't mean anything to me. But then to hear Heidi actually say, this is what he said, and this is why it's problematic and hurtful and incorrect, then that's criticism that I can see and understand, as opposed to just, I feel like the word anti-Semite is thrown around so much. And especially like on social media, we can't always explain why we believe that, or why someone's an anti-Semite. So it's just, this person's anti-Semite, this person's anti-Semitic. And so it like a little bit loses its power in my mind. But then for Heidi to be able to explain to me specifically, then I can see it. And I can actually see for the first time why someone listening to Tucker Carlson would think he's an anti-Semitic, like genuinely, not just, because they don't like his ideas or his politics.
Yeah. I'm also sensing too, because the reason I even asked the question about regulation is because I, like Mary, my heart started racing too. And then I thought, oh, I'll just like use what I'm feeling and put it back out there. And it just sounds like there's so much respect that you both have for each other, that that the other person is coming from a curious place. I have a friend, not as close as you two, but I do have a friend way before October 7th that we had opposite views. And I had so much respect. I still have so much respect for him because I was curious. He was so smart. We just had different views. To this day, now we make jokes because I feel like, at times I'm sort of coming more to like understanding him and maybe thinking that makes sense to me. So I'm wondering, since you both have done a film together and you're friends, and I think you probably have had several interviews besides this one, how is it different to sort of navigate these conversations in public versus when it's just you two one-on-one?
I haven't been asked that question.
I feel like it's very similar. It's just with an interview, we're talking about what we talk about, as opposed to, when it's just us, we're engaging with each other.
Yes, I agree. Although I feel like if the interviewers give us the chance, we get into it, just have to feel out what they want to hear, what they're interested in. And then we go there, it's fine. Yeah.
I love it. It's like what she sees, what you get.
Yeah, because I think also
Yeah.
our relationship, I think, Netta, tell me if you agree, but like I think part of our conversations too is we're mothers and we're teachers as mothers and we want to model behavior. So we have to do the thing that we do in private, in public, so that people can see that this is possible and this is necessary. It's what's needed
Yeah.
right now in this moment.
Yes.
I love that. Okay, so going with that, what do you think people, specifically students, or let's say even professors, because in my opinion, it needs to start with leadership. So administration, professors, and also students, what did they get wrong? Where is the conversation not going to the place, the beautiful place that you took it? What are we doing in society, especially in higher education, that is just not working? Netta, maybe you can start.
Yeah, very many things. Coming from the place of wanting to be understood and wanting to make your case and wanting the other person to see things the way you see them. And shutting people down to stop listening because, like you said, like certain things give us emotional reactions, but to be able to emotionally regulate yourself and stay in a calm position and neutral. And the last thing is the compassion of, there's enough for both of us. I think sometimes, like with the Israel-Palestine example, it's like, well, tens of thousands of Palestinians died and, how many Israelis died, 1,000 or less on October 7th. So, you should feel more sad for this side or, it's not justified when really like you can be sad for those lives lost. You can hear the pain and how it happened and the violence of it and the not to say they're the same thing at all. I want to make sure they were two. One was an act of terror and one was allegedly in defense and defending themselves to so being able to hold that sad, like there's not a limited amount of compassion and sadness. So Heidi can be really sad about that amount of people. And I can also be sad. And it's not like one of us is entitled to more mic time or, more compassion than the other.
It's not a competition of sadness, I think you're saying.
Yeah, it's not a competition of victimhood. I think especially I see it on the Palestinian side. We love to be the victim.
The oppression Olympics.
That's it. Right.
Yeah, the oppression Olympics. So I want to build on what Netta said and give a concrete example of something we experienced together and also tie back into some of the things that she just said that I think are important to like zero in on because it's part of this dialogue. It's part of this conversation. So we were invited by a very brave chair of women, gender, and sexuality, the department chair at Occidental College in the Los Angeles area to do a screening of Screams Before Silence, Sheryl Sandberg's documentary, and our film, Daughters of Abraham. Netta flew all the way from Oklahoma, like putting her time and treasure and resources into that experience to be together to present this film. So what are we getting wrong? That the adults in charge are making sure that these conversations don't happen. There was a whole successful effort to make sure that people didn't come to that event. There was a conflicting event that happened chaired by some other department about transnational feminism. A door of the building that's never locked was locked. Like literally people were physically and emotionally invested in to not come to the event. There was someone with a headpiece directing people. Like we found out all about this later.
Wow.
So there were like 10 people that came. There were 4 students. They were all Jewish students. The department chair like hosted the event. Our moderator is a woman who herself is a survivor of sexual assault, like one of the Marilyn Manson victims. Like she's been through so much, and it's so important for her to give voice to all survivors and all the issues around that. So the people in charge are keeping us from having these conversations, the adults in the places where you're supposed to be curious and want to learn, the university setting. So I think that's a huge thing. And even like, so when Netta, I saw Susie and Mary, I saw both of you tighten your bodies when she said allegedly defending, right? But because part of the conversations that Netta and I have, and it's because she's a lawyer, is that, so there was an act of terror on October 7th that resulted in the death of over 1,000 human lives, right? Men, women, children, elderly, and everything in between. And in retaliation and in defense, Israel waged a war against Hamas, right? And so for Netta, as a Palestinian, not all of those lives were, not all of those people who have died were responsible for what happened on October 7th. There are many people, many victims in that war who did not deserve to be buried in rubble, right? So that we can have, I know that when she says that allegedly, I know she knows that it is a war against terrorism. I know that. And I know that not everyone who perished in this war are responsible for that war, and there have been innocent lives taken. And it's in that really so she has to say allegedly because she's a lawyer, number one, and not 100% of those lives taken in this war were responsible for October 7th.
Yes.
And it's very important.
It's just the extent of it. Yes.
Yes. And so it's very important. And again, like I can hold that and hear her say that she knows that what happened. I mean, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it had to happen. What other country would let something like that happen to it and not go in with its full force?
The extent of it that I think a lot of people have debates about.
And we should be, because that's like we have international law and we have discussion forums and we have media. We're supposed to be talking. We're supposed to check each other, right? So that's just even a perfect example of like, I hear her say that. And because I know her and I know where she's coming from, I didn't have a reaction to that, right? But I saw it in both of you because I know that like for us as Jewish people, constantly being accused of being like the devil and the worst thing that ever happened to humanity. And we hear that message generation after generation. Like that's our like trauma response, right? But there are people who can have conversations that are nuanced like that. And it's just, I think that's like a really good example of like where we get into it and we continue to just, we meet each other, even though it's so hard and painful, you know?
First of all, Heidi, great observation. I think what's interesting is, well, there's so much to unpack, but one of the first thing that comes to my mind is like, you're right. Like that activated my trauma network, like, because I'm so used to people saying, oh, Israel committing genocide. And I went down the rabbit hole of, are we? What's happening, while holding the idea that the reality that so many Palestinians have died and they shouldn't have died. And it's the dialectic of October 7th was absolutely awful. And like you said, Heidi, Israel needed to respond and need to eliminate the terrorists that came from it. And at the same time, holding this pain of so many lives were lost, children and women, even if it was not genocide, even if there was no intention. So I'm thinking about all the conversation that we had with people, or that I speak for myself, that I attempt to have with people that were not able to sit with this uncomfortableness and to ask those curious questions. I had one event of very similar of doing the screening of Scream Before Silence and talking about Believing All Women with Anila Ali. And we talked about the how no one should use sexual assault as a weapon of war. We were boycotted. We were protested against, not by the students, by faculty. And it's in the gender and feminist colleges. This was in CSUN. And I remember I was feeling betrayed by those women, by professors. And I had another incident, again, CSUN as well, sorry, LA, where I gave a talk with Mubin Sheikh. And Mubin is Muslim, he's former Islamist, and the whole talk was about extremism and the connection between radicalization and way of thinking to anti-Semitism was part of it, but it was really about how do we stop hate as hate. And we were boycotted. We had three people came to this talk, and all of them were Jewish. And we found out later that, again, it came from above. People were saying to them, oh, we're going to come, and two different classes promised to be there. The professor said to the person who organized it, we're going to be there. And again, it's that feeling of betrayed, but also I remember feeling, which is the same feeling I had when you were explaining your experience, which is why I became emotional all of a sudden, hopelessness. Because there you are, both of you, the perfect example of how it should be, the hope of how conversation can happen. That yes, I mean, they can be uncomfortable. I truly believe that only when you're uncomfortable you can change and you can grow. And yet we have the adults in the room that not only not willing to have those conversations, they're preventing those conversations from happening. So like the emotion I was having is just this pure hopelessness all of a sudden after feeling so hopeful during during this podcast. I mean, I don't have a specific question in mind. I'm just thinking like, oh, this is so fucking sad.
It is. I'm sorry to laugh, but it is like it gets so sad that you have to laugh, right? Like it's a survival response.
And I'm wondering too, it's funny because when Miri gets sad, then I get sad because rarely do I see her sad because she's an Israeli, that there's always hope. And then when there's any hope, I'm like, wait, no, now what? But I'm wondering, like, when a conversation becomes heated, between you two, and it sounds like it doesn't become that heated because you both are like regulated and there's so much love and compassion between both of you. But how do you sort of navigate through that? And just like Miri was saying, that we have to be uncomfortable to grow and to get to the other side. So how do you both navigate that? And maybe Neda, we could start with you.
Yeah. So I think our definition of heated is we're both just really sad. I think that's like, to me, the intense conversations is when one of us is just crying and really upset. And so I think just to listen and hear them. And also, we don't always have to be talking. Like if someone wants to cry, we can just, just cry. It's okay. Not trying to like fix each other's pain or anything like that. If there's something we disagree with, like the extent of the response and how much of it was defense as to how much was maybe unnecessary or negligent, reckless, intentional, negligent. Those are 3 different variations, but that it's okay to disagree.
Yeah.
Which, that's okay. I don't believe that, but that's okay. I at least now know why she thinks that and what she thinks, and how, so many other people can also think the way that she thinks, because, otherwise I just think, the people that don't agree with me, they're crazy or they love violence or whatever. So in talking to her, I can see how someone can, with a straight face and a genuine heart, say it is all Israel defending themselves. Like that's preposterous to me, but I can at least see her reasoning and why, like as a lawyer, why now I can make a case if I wanted to. I could, fully say, this is why Israel's defending itself, and here's why. Here's what they're doing. What else would you have them do? What other options? If you were in their position, look at the position that they are in the Middle East. Not that I believe it again, but I can at least, I see her side.
It's validation. You don't have to agree to validate or to see each other's perspective.
Yeah.
I like, for my answer to that question, I would say, I've never thought about this, Neda, but like definitely when we first started having our conversations, I would get nervous about saying what I was going to say. Then what I remembered is that Neda, like, I don't know this person. I don't know what she's going to say to this yet, right? So it's back to that humanization, like seeing her as an individual who has her own mind and her own thoughts and experiences, and I guess giving a chance, right? So like I would get nervous about speaking my truth because I was afraid that I already knew what the response was going to be. But I just had to remind myself, no, she's asking the question and I'm going to answer the question, and we'll deal with what happens after that. But if she's asking me the question, I don't know this person yet. So I can't assume how she's going to respond to me. So I have to give it a chance.
Yes. And also understanding we're both coming from our own generational trauma and our own biases, how we were raised, and what we see, on our social media feed. My social media feed is very different than Heidi's social media feed. So to be able to acknowledge that, we see things through very different lenses. And, the history of Palestinian oppression, the Holocaust, our grandpa being a survivor, my parents being raised in the West Bank under the occupation, and hearing all those stories growing up, and seeing the pain and the sadness, and also just, it's in our bones a little bit, understanding that we're coming from 2 very different places.
What do you hope that people will take from your friendship, so we can think about a hopeful message in this conversation?
I have a lot of colliding thoughts. So again, I haven't asked that question before, I don't think, or not in that way, about how do you, like, a hopeful message. I think what's lacking right now is a willingness to give each other dignity. Like it's a 0-sum game. So if I if I see the humanity in that person and I give them the dignity that they deserve as a human being, then somehow I betray my own dignity or my own people. I think, what Netta just said about it was really profound what she just said, actually. Like, I'm gonna have to like marinate in that a little bit about like really being able to respect and hold each other but not agree. Even if I make my most convincing case, every action that Israel has taken in the war in Gaza was justified and it was right and it was for the cause. It's uncomfortable. It's really uncomfortable for me to hear her say, like, I don't believe that. There are things that have been done that are absolutely abominable and they're crimes and like that like gets me in my core. And I know that it's true to on some, like, of course no one is perfect, right? And like I think, and I want to say to her, but like, don't hold the Jewish people to a double standard. And she's not saying that. She's just saying objectively, like, there's a war and bad things have happened. And that's irrefutable because like there's no absoluteness there. Like, you can't have an absolute everything was right. Like, sitting, I know this is very rambling a little bit, but to be able to sit in the discomfort of that this person will never be convinced that I am right. I have not convinced this person. And she still loves me, and she still can recognize my humanity, and she will give me and my people our dignity. And in return, I will not agree with everything she says. I will recognize her humanity, and I will give her people the dignity that they deserve, because we are all made in God's image, and that is what we deserve. Even if we don't see things the same way, even if we are fighting until the end of the earth as we know it, that you can have that horrible reality and still respect people. I don't know how that's hopeful, but it means that we can always keep trying, right? Like we're not to give up, because there's the promise that like nation will put down the sword and pick up the plowshare or whatever. I hold those words like in my heart in a way I never have been able to before, because that's it. Like, there's a promise that we can do better. And I think if I can hold on and recognize her humanity and hold her with dignity, that tomorrow we have another chance to try again. And also, like, as women, I'm like, I want to problem solve. I want to make it better for everyone. I want to hold everyone and say it's going to be okay. Let me get you some chocolate and a cookie and hold you and sing you a lullaby and it'll be fine. And that's not reality. And that's like where like like the divine feminine has to come into. Like, I have to be so strong to hold that tragedy and that possibility in the same place.
Yes.
I think I'm crying because, first of all, because all of us are women that are fighting for the same cause. And what you're saying is, it's so profound, like the ability to sit with this it's incredible discomfort. It's cognitive dissonance. It's everything that you want to push and push and push, and being able to say, I'm not going to convince, I'm not going to push, I'm not going to agree, and that's okay. I still love this person. I still respect this person as a human being. I'm not going to see this human being as a problem. I'm going to see this human being as my friend. I don't think I've heard someone say that since October 7th. And I think, to me, like, that, just this conversation, I mean, this is happy tears, because like it gives me hope that if both of you who are strangers can do that and become so profoundly attached to each other and feel the pain so deeply, your pain and each other pain at the same time, that maybe there is still hope. And I think I'm also just a little bit jealous that you have each other, because I don't have Aneta in my life. And I was really looking for someone to have this conversation and to be able to cry, that share tears together. So I really appreciate it. But sorry, Netta, go ahead. Like, what is your...
Well, my hope is that there is no other way to move forward and to see the Israel and the Palestine that we want to see, and for my people to live there in peace, and for, Heidi's people to live there in peace, and to actually enjoy and, have that freedom to enjoy the beautiful land. There's no way that we're going to do that unless we can come together. And so a little bit of this is selfish in that, I want to do something for Palestinians, and even like just this conversation. Well, maybe now you'll have a better perspective about Palestinians, or a more positive outlook. Or, when someone says Israel is not defending itself, that it's not so triggering, or it's not, one of the sayings that the pro-Palestinian side says is from the river to the sea. And I was able to explain to Heidi that I had never thought that meant that any like Israelis or Jewish will be gone at all. Like I just thought that that meant like the Palestinians that are there and will be free from one side to the other, not that Palestinians are going to be taking over that land. So, well, all that to say is just to be able to bring humanity to Palestinians is that we all want to live there peacefully and together. And I think that would be so beautiful. And Heidi and I envision, going there together and our kids and, walking hand in hand. And so it's actually necessary. So if someone wants to call themselves, pro-Palestinian or pro-Israel or an activist, well, just by like regurgitating your side's perspectives, that doesn't do anything, especially young people. You really want to make a difference. This is how you do it. This is how you do the work. And so there's a responsibility there.
100%. Yeah, I want a Nida in my life also, and I tried to find one, and it didn't work. I tried since October 7th to find one, and yeah, it never happened for me either. But you give me hope. There is hope since you both exist. And you can coexist with love. So the final question that we ask each person is, what are you going to do for your healing this week?
Good question.
That's a really good question. All right, my healing this week.
We have all to-do lists and all the things we need to accomplish.
Yeah. Okay, so I know I've said this to Netta a lot of times in our conversations. We don't just talk about Israel and Palestine and Israelis and Palestinians and Jews and Muslims and all the things. The world is crazy. And I often say one of the best, like I smell my kids' heads, like I hold and hug my kids and I smell them and I just like calm down. So like I'm so blessed to have 3 beautiful children that because they force me to be present in the moment, that nothing else matters. And so I'm away from my kids right now. So I'm, God willing, getting home tomorrow night safe and sound. And I'm going to go hug and kiss them and smell them and just try to be present with them and give them what they need. And in turn, they give me exactly what I need to just keep perspective and keep centered. So they heal me with their existence and their sense. So that's what I'm doing. Hug, kiss, and smell my kids.
I love it.
Yes, I would say I'm going to try to have some exercise, whether it's a walk, fresh air, or going to the gym. That's been really difficult for me to make time for myself to do. And it's really rejuvenating. So I'm going to do that. What about you?
Spend time just listening to music, but fully immerse myself in the music. I had a knee surgery, so I can't dance. Usually I dance, but just like listening to the music that calms me down with a hand on my heart to just feel the heartbeat and really just try to calm down and relax. So I think tomorrow morning, I'm actually going to start with just good songs, calming down, and being present.
That is a good one. I live, it's so funny how I'm like, that's hard. I live in LA, but right now I'm in Chicago and it's so cold. So I'd never want to do anything, but there is a Pilates studio that exists. And I was like, you know what? Just get yourself there. Just 1 hour, you can do this. So I think I'm going to try to get myself to that studio, even in like 20-degree weather.
I'm going to hold you on to that. I'm going to text you tomorrow. Did you make it to Pilates?
Well, thank you both so much. I love both of your heartbeats and you give me so much hope. And you both are so calm. I don't think Miri or I have ever been like emotional or like heart beating fast and then crying, like all the feels that we had with you both. Yeah, was just beautiful to witness.
We gave them an authentic experience, Netta.
But I think but maybe that's the formula. Because you have to go through this roller coaster of emotions in order and to feel the primary emotion, feel the sadness without a secondary of avoiding it, without the anger, in order to be on the other side, in order to be regulated and hopeful again. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe you cracked the code. Thank you both so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bye.
We'd like to thank the Academic Engagement Network for their generous support. Music designer Ivan Reyes, podcast coordinator Chandler O'Reilly, and to all of our listeners. Today's episode is co-produced by Associate Professor Susie Hess and Dr. Mary Barr-Halpern.
Our Stories Matter, Campus Voices Civil Engagement in an Era of Division, is brought to you by Trauma Informed Learning Alliance. Check us out on Facebook and Instagram and our website at traumainformedla.org.
Please give us 5 stars on iTunes so more people can have access, and donate to traumainformedla.org so we can keep healing through our storytelling episodes.